I think that's recording?
That's recording.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Jewish Inspiration Podcast. We have a Sunday special like none other. We have my dear friend, Rav Gav from Jerusalem. We're friends for many years. I don't even know where we met at first.
I think originally Torch. I think you brought groups to Israel.
That is correct. I remember that. And
in Dallas. Were you in Dallas one Shabbos with the Shabbos?
I was. That's right. We did a Shabbaton there. You didn't have your gun
with you. I don't know if I say that or not, but you said
I remember that.
I feel naked without my gun.
My dear friends, my hope and prayer is that we continue to be inspired and we learn from Rav Gav something new, something that's incredible from his story, from his life. I hope there's something that we're able to take to instill into our daily lives. So Rav Gav, tell me a little bit about your life.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you.
Where you come from.
I'm going to tell you where I go. We'll see. I just want to first tell you that you fall down, you get back up. Right? We've heard the expression before. They sing it in a song or whatever it is. We go through life, we do things and we fail, and then maybe you give up or whatever it is. My friends, this is take 2. We recorded 8 minutes and then realized it's not recording. But at least we noticed it that we're going weiter, we're pulling it again. I've done this a few times where somebody, I'm not going to say, I have to be careful how I say this. There was a person somewhere in the world that wanted to do a podcast. And we'll get to where I'm from. And they said, okay, let's do it. Push me. Finally, okay, we did it. The first 20 minutes, nothing was going on. It's messed up, whatever. It took a full year until they put out the podcast. And they did it. We did audio, visual, the whole thing. And it was only audio. And I was like, we could have done on the phone. Like, what do we, this whole thing? I came out here, this, that. He's like, yeah, no, sorry about that. Like, forgot to record or like whatever. I was like, bro, like, what? You know what I'm saying? He paid me the same that you're paying me now. Yeah. I'm saying it was a great price and all. Which is, I mean, if anyone here, you could even probably pay triple and still afford it. But anyway, you fall down, you get back up. Keep pushing.
Yeah, I actually just mentioned that in my class a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I mentioned Shevi Poltzadik Vakam, that a person, it says that the righteous fall 7 times. I said, what does that really mean? At least in my understanding, is that the state, 7 is the number of nature. The nature of someone who is growing is that you fall.
Yeah.
But do you know what else? Of a righteous person? Vikam, you get up. Every time. It doesn't make a difference that you fell. Many people focus on the fall. Focus on getting back up.
That's right.
So we're back up. So
right. Well, I mean, going along with that theme, which I'm sure you mentioned either here or in the past, Yipol is future. It's not 7 fell. You fell 7 times. Yipol, you're going to fall. Oh, Shkaya, thank you. That's very encouraging, Like, by the way, kid, you go out there in life, you're going to fail. Hatzlacha, good luck. So what does that mean? Answer is, yeah, like you said, it's a unit, it's a constant, it's going to happen. I think there's Rav Hutner maybe said, maybe it's Elisha, I think Rav Hutner maybe says the difference in the tzaddik and a rasha, a righteous person and a wicked person, is not that the righteous guy doesn't fall, but he gets back up, he continues on. So yes, this is take 2, and this is a great take 2. I am originally from Woodmere. We're going to run through this. I was born in Manhattan, lived in Brooklyn, moved to Maryland, then to Passaic, New Jersey, then to Woodmere at the age of 9.
Just by the way, one second. Why did you move so many times till the age of 9?
Yeah, I mean...
I'm not asking questions about your parents, but
There's no one going to say, like, why did I? Because my parents did, and I went along with them. They didn't really give me a choice on this one. I guess it was jobs. I'm assuming that's what it was. My father was working here, there, everywhere. Until finally we ended up in the everywhere. Anyway,
what did your father do?
He's a fundraiser. So, and now he's working for Yad Ezra Vashulamit, which is
great organization.
So, yeah, they service many Yidden people that are lacking in funds to be able to live their lives. So yeah, he's a fundraiser par excellence, which is why I know all the tips and tricks of like all the fundraisers, whatever they call me. They say, we want to thank you. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. And I say, listen, we cut to the chase. How much money do you want? This is the bottom line. Like, I got it. Like, you will see.
My father wrote that script.
Yeah, it's like I just got a call from someone. They go, this organization, you will save this boy. And I could hear like papers. And it goes, David. So I said, can you do me a favor? Hold on a second. I said, when's his birthday? When's David's birthday? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, I thought like, are you talking? They're like, no. I'm like, all right, how much money do you want? This is like tachas, you know? Anyway, so they moved, I guess, work and whatever it is, till finally Woodmere at the age of 9 years old, and eventually to Eretz Yisrael, to the Holy Land. Standard protocol, after high school, go to Eretz Yisrael.
Go for yeshiva for a few years, get married.
Gap year and whatever it is. So I ended up going, and I'm on my 25th year. And I went there and I stayed there, but I started off as in Yerushalayim, OJ. Then in OJ, it's like I like to call it, O and J. No one really does that but me. But anyway, that's OJ. Then Tomo, which I haven't come up with anything yet. I guess Tomo, And then and I got married in the meantime. Then Eshat Torah. That is the basic rundown. Yeah.
And at what point did you decide that you want to go into Jewish education?
So there was never really a thought process of going into Jewish education. As a youngster, growing up in the 90s, my goal was to make money. That was my goal. Make cash money. That's what it's all about. Then I went to a camp called NCSY Kollel, which is a mix of those coming from secular backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and I drank some serious Kool-Aid, which I don't think most people even know what that means anymore, that phrase. But anyway, the point is that I got in, Hawaiian
I'll tell you who knows. The mothers know.
The mothers,
exactly. They don't want their kids drinking that Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah, my mother knew. Yeah. So anyway, I went to camp, and it really did a real turnaround in my mentality about what's valuable. And this is why Kollel was a great place. We played basketball all day. We learned a little bit, hung out with guys that are older and cooler, and know everything about life. Being 3 or 4 years older.
What was that one switch that flipped in your head that said like, oh, okay, this is the right thing for me to dedicate my life to. This is what I want to be doing. Living for 25 years in Israel, raising a family there, and being a rabbi in one of the most prominent Jewish institutions in the world, Eshat Torah, right across from the Western Wall.
Yeah, there was no one particular thing. It's like, oh, ding, that was it. There's a reality, I think, when people ask, how do you know what you're supposed to do in life? How do you know what your purpose is and whatever? I can't say that I know exactly detailed down to the whatever, but I feel fairly confident that I'm in the right, I don't know what the word to use.
Right place.
I was going to say vocation. I don't think it's the
right
right
word.
This is what
God wants you to do.
I think this is what the Lord Almighty wants. Right? I think this is along the lines. I just thought of something funny. But yeah, it's a something you told me a bunch of years ago. Anyway, gosh, remember the story you told me about? You went out to dinner to lunch with the priest and about the questions, and we don't do that. I swear, that's a murdering story. I've said that story over many times.
Yeah.
No, we don't ask questions because it's going to unravel everything. Okay, I know none of you. The inside discussion, you'll explain later. But anyway, the point is that
I'll say the story. I was supposed to do the invocation for a
Yad Vashem or something?
No, the Holocaust Museum. It was a big event, and they said, okay, you're going to do it. It's going to be a multi
joint.
yeah, exactly. So either way, it was going to be a priest or a minister or a pastor and a rabbi, and it's like the beginning of a good joke. Either way, so they said we want you to meet in advance and coordinate what you're going to say.
Rabbi and priest walking into a Holocaust museum. That's a great joke.
So we actually met at Starbucks, and we're just getting to know each other and getting to to plan out what it is that we're going to talk, what are we going to say in our invocation. So we had a few agreements. The first one is that we're not going to say God, or he's not going to say other names of gods, and we're just going to we can say God as a general, but that's it. That was it. It was going to be very short, brief things, but they wanted us to plan it out. Either way, in the process of getting to know each other, he asked me, as a typical, spiritual leader. He says, where are you a rabbi? I said, I'm not a rabbi of a congregation. I do education, and I teach in many different congregations. That's what Torch does. We teach everywhere. So he said, what are you teaching right now? So I said, right now we're in the middle of a question and answer series, and we're going from congregation to congregation. People can ask any question, open mic, and just ask whatever you want. And I asked him in total innocence, do you ever do that in your congregation? Give people an opportunity to ask any question. So he pauses and he looks at me, he says, you don't realize who you're talking to. He says, in our religion, there are no questions. And I was like dumbfounded. I was like, how's that possible? In Judaism, everything's about asking questions. And, you look at the Talmud, you don't see a single line in the Talmud that doesn't have a question. Everything's about questions. And you're constantly countering. And, because he says, we have to take a leap of faith because once you start asking questions, like it all falls apart. And I was like, that moment of honesty was just like,
accidental.
Almost, right? It was like it was like, I was shocked. I was like, how is he actually saying that? But that's the truth. Is like when you pursue truth, it's all like questions doesn't intimidate us. On the contrary, it strengthens us.
That's right. I've used that many times. I've said this story over. You shared this with me a bunch of years ago, and I've said over in terms of, I'm not scared to not have an answer. Like,
right.
If I don't know an answer, I'm not always going to get it. But I'm scared for you if you don't have a question. Like, if you're not even thinking, you're not asking. You got to ask. You got to know, like, what's going on. Be bothered. Have a kasha. You could have even just at least a question, and even a challenge that doesn't make any sense.
That's fine. It's fine to have. I have a class that I teach every Sunday morning. It's called Everyday Judaism. We learn Jewish law, and very practical Jewish law, how to live as a Jew. Yeah. And it is a very steep fee. Those of you online, you're welcome to join us, Everyday Judaism, Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock. So
live.
What's the fee? Live, online, or in person? But there's a very steep fee. And the fee is $199 per class, unless you come with a question.
That's amazing.
If you come with a question, it's free. You get a $199 rebate, right? And we don't mail it back to you.
See the guy paying. Come on, that would be great.
There's nobody who pays. Shockingly, there's nobody who pays. Because all we want is really, and the real purpose of it is not only that we learn halacha, that we learn that as Jewish people, we need to ask questions. You need to have a rabbi that you go to, that you ask questions to. Because if you don't ask, you're not seeking truth. You're not taking your education, your learning to the next level. You have to always be bothered by something. What's going on over here?
Yeah, so going back to the original question of what was the turning point, the thing that made me know to think, it's more of a, when you plug in to the wall and the electricity turns on, it's not a, so how do you know the electricity is working? Because the light's on. What do you mean? That's how I know. When I started teaching, it was not at all that I saw that, because I first started with younger kids that they weren't interested. And I was like, if I would have taken that as my example of what I'm doing, I would have never taught the rest of my life. Then by a series of events, I ended up teaching older, those that are interested. It could be younger too, but that are interested. And holy moly, the feeling of satisfaction and just of like the things came together. It's more like the light turned on. So when the light turned on, it's like, okay, this just makes sense. Now, it's something I had been doing my whole life. That's the thing that you don't notice. I didn't notice per se, but I enjoy giving over. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy, helping. So that it was a series of processes that occurred, and then but the question of like the click to go in that direction of living a life of not money, but of other things, I don't remember the conversations. Don't remember them. I remember having conversations. I imagine the conversations were like the following. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, actually. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name, so I'll say it, Chili. And he picked me up at the airport. And I probably shouldn't say, his whole name, Birnbaum. And he said to me, a lot of people are chasing after money, but aren't stopping to think, what are you going to do when you get the money? Now what? So there you have it. Now what? You're going to, now you're going to buy something, and you're going to buy something else, and you're going to buy something else. Like, what are you going to do with the money? And then it's like, oh, right, true. So I imagine that's where the conversations were when I was like 15, 16. Like, okay, you want to make that money? If you're smart with like little younger kids, you won't fight with them. You just play it out with them. Yeah. Great. Okay, what do you want to do with that? Yeah, well, I'll have the money. Then what? Like, then I'll buy stuff.
Right.
So what? I imagine that's where it was. Don't know for sure. And then it was just an awakening of like, okay, so then you're right. What is the then what? Then what do I want to do with my life? What's meaningful? What's purposeful? How can I feel that every day it's valuable? And not that I'm doing something for then it's going to be something.
But now.
Yeah, right now. I tell you so, the ayin, right? And now, what does Hashem want from you? Just at this moment. Not about the future. Not what's going to be even Olam Haba, even though we have the Mishnayos, the different teachings about the Olam Hazeh, the Olam Hazeh, from Olam Haba. This world is a corridor for the next world and all that jazz. It's all true, but it's also ahora en el mundo aquí. What are we going to do at this moment? So, yeah, I can't even tell you. Like, it was this conversation, it was that conversation. Right. I think it was a series of being brainwashed, of educated, of a direction. Do you have to edit that?
No, that's fine. Just go straight. People can handle it. Yeah. Question. How does it feel? And to me, it's like I remember when I learned in Aish, when I started my rabbinical ordination training, right? I started with Rabbi Berkowitz in Aish, and then we moved out. He started the Jerusalem Kollel, and then we moved to a different location.
Yeah.
But I remember that period of time that I was coming to the old city, being by the Western Wall every single day. Does it ever get old? Does it ever feel? Do you ever feel numb to just the awe of being in the greatest place on earth?
So my daughter asked me recently, how often do you go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, which is, I exaggerate not, from where I quote unquote work to get there will take, with walking traffic, 2 minutes. I see it every day. It's right there. Mm-hmm. She said, "When's the last time? How often do you go?" I said, "I go I think the last time I was 10 years ago." She's like, "What?" She's like, "I would go every day. Don't you think whatever?" The answer is, I can't speak for anyone else but me. Yeah, totally loses it. I see it every single day. It's so background. And it was like, what do you mean? The holiness. I'm like, okay, but what do you want from me? When I moved from Passaic to Woodmere, I remember this. I was 9 years old. I just turned 9. In June was my birthday, June 6th. We moved July 29th. I remember this as if it was as many years ago as it was. Mm-hmm. And we moved. And Passaic, New Jersey is not like Elizabeth, which is close to, let's say, Newark Airport, right? We weren't close to an airport. Relatively speaking, it's not far. It is like half an hour or whatever. I grew up in Woodmere, a 10-minute drive from JFK. There were planes going over my house every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes. It was loud, whatever. And 2 blocks away from a train station. I remember the first couple of weeks in Woodmere. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't hear myself. It was insane. It's like every couple of minutes, it's like, and I was like, I could lose my mind. And then after a while, I didn't hear it at all. And it got to a point where I didn't even know there's a plane unless I couldn't hear you talking to me anymore. If you'd be standing in front of me, we're outside talking, and I couldn't hear you. I'm like, why can't I hear you anymore? Oh, right, because there's a plane going over, right? You get used to things in life. It could be loud as anything, the loudest thing of an airplane that's literally 100 feet above your head. We used to try to throw basketballs at it, whatever. It's before there were a lot of cameras, so no one came for us. But we used to try to whatever. You get used to it. So you come to a place like well, you never be able to get used to the Wailing Wall. And it says, okay, call me whatever you'd like. So, I did. I got used to it.
So the question is that a good thing or not? That we become numb to things?
I think it's okay. Now, my initial thought would be that it's not a good thing. I think it is the reality. I'm saying good, bad, right, wrong. It is a reality of life. When you get used to things, you get used to things. Now, sometimes that could be used in positive in terms of when a person wants to grow and something's very hard for them.
So I have two stories I want to share. First is Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, the great Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva. They say that when he would go to the Western Wall, give it a kiss and leave, because he didn't want to become numb to the awe of the place. That's story number one. Story number two is that I asked my grandfather,
who's your grandfather?
Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, my legendary grandfather.
Yeah.
And he was. I asked him, when was the last time you went to the Western Wall? He said, 25 years ago. So I said to him, maybe we go. I would love to go with you. So he said, I need some time to prepare. And for 3 or 4 weeks, he still felt unready to go. And then finally we went together. I took him. And it was, but he needed 4 weeks to prepare himself to be in such a holy place. And we went, and maybe we were there for 5 minutes and left. Because, like you're saying, it's very easy to become numb. And it's
David
like that.
Melech, this is the famous Shifti B'Beis Hashem, right? David Melech asks in one
David
of his...
Melech is?
King David.
Oh, yeah.
King David wrote a book called Psalms. And for those who know how to read, it's Psalms. And he writes in one of the chapters there, he says, I think it's chapter 131, is it? Or 31?
23.
23? We'll go with that.
Yeah.
He writes...
1 second. It's, yeah.
David.
I think so.
23?
No, I think it's 130. I think you're right there.
No, it can't be 1:30. It's Kuflam. Oh, Kuflam. Anyway.
Yeah.
Call in with what psalm it is. So King David writes, Shifti bebeis Hashem kol yemei chayai. I would like to sit in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. All the days of my life. But then it says, Levaker be'echalo, that I would like to be a visitor. To be a visitor, to be a guest. So I do want to sit there, as in like you live there, or do you want to be a guest? The answer that I have heard many a time from my father is that, maybe it's quoting Beis Halevi, I don't know, I'm not sure, but he says that both. I want to be there all the time, but with the appreciation and the recognition of the sanctity and the holiness of the place. You know, people say, would you walk in the car? You're standing on the couch. Would you do that in your house? The answer is, yes, I do it in my house. I wouldn't do it in someone else's house. But of course I do it in my house because I'm so used to it. So to be in a place which is so awe-inspiring and reverence, to be there often, but not that we should lose that level. Okay, so that's what you say. Is it a good thing or bad thing? The answer is, I think it's just a reality. Where it's a good thing is what I was starting to say is when it comes to an area where a person says it's hard for me to grow or do something. The answer is, yeah, but like anything in life, it becomes second nature. If it always stayed as difficult as it was the first time, then it would be very hard to continue. Kol eschalus kashas, all beginnings are difficult. But if you're willing to push beyond that, so then it gets easy because you get used to it. Well, then you get used to it. No, but then you're doing it. It's like an area, dieting, exercise. All the beginnings are difficult. But once you push past that, then you get into routine and keep going. That's where it's a good thing that a person gets used to, or it's a bad thing. Rachmana liba Hashem wants our heart. He wants us to be connected. It's not just doing stuff. It's like, I want your heart. I want you to be connected with it. And that's where it's difficult, to be able to do something and be connected with it. I think that is probably the biggest challenge.
You know, because it's something that comes up very frequently in our classes where, you know, people who are coming to Judaism at a later stage of life, they're like, oh, Rabbi, if we only grew up like you grew up in a religious home, everything would be so much better. I'm like, you don't understand.
Right.
You know, I bring the example of my 2-year-old daughter who, you know, we say Shema together, and she says every night before she goes to sleep, and we say Shema, she says Shema every time she goes to school in the morning, and by the time she'll be obligated to recite the Shema at the age of 12, she will have said it probably 10,000 times. By that time, she is so numb to the words she's saying, she has no idea what it is she's saying. It's like it becomes second nature, it becomes habit, right. and then you don't feel it. But when someone comes at a later age, which is not, you know, everyone has its virtues, but it's very easy for anyone to fall into a situation.
It's one of the biggest lines I heard from the Momentum trips, JWRP, Lori Polanik's trips. She brings women to Israel. And it's like, Rabbi, if we had a rabbi like you when we were kids, then our lives would be very different. And I always said, me too. If I had a rabbi like me, I would also be very different. But at the same time, not true. Like I said today, I spoke in one of the schools, and I spoke to the rabbis, and I said, guys, I want to give you a bracha, I'll give you a blessing that you should be able to see strong, even though these kids look like they're totally not interested, simply because they're totally not interested. But you should be able to push through and give them what they need to be able to whatever it is. I can come in here and interest them because I'm fresh meat, I'm fresh blood. You know, like I'm coming in the first time. Give me a couple days here, they won't care. Like my students at Aish, they go like, you know, they don't listen. I go, guys, they listen to me in Texas. Listen, I'm worth it, you know? We get used to things. It's a challenge. It's a hard thing. But again, they have that positive to be able to push through. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
If there's something that you can bring back from your childhood, what would it be?
Well, it's a funny question, the way you worded it. I would bring back the innocence of not being involved in technology. That's what I would bring back. In other words, what I would change is not get involved with it. In other words, in particular, the world of the smartphone. I think it's the most destructive thing since the smartphone. It is incredibly destructive. But what do you mean? It does good things, and that. Yeah, I hear you. It does good things. It does if you use it for those things. But if you don't, then no. And now that's in terms of negative. But then we also just have parav. How much of my time has been sapped and taken away from my life because of the fact that I had such a thing. And it's funny thing for me is, it wasn't even for my youth. I got one much later in life. I got it only when I was working, just for scheduling, and it has a filter and it has the things, whatever. It just takes away from one's life. Oh, but we're doing something now, a podcast, a thing, and these things. Okay, I'm not saying not to be involved in any technology. You're allowed to have a toilet. It's great technology. All right, but I mean to say is What I personally would change, and by the way, incidentally, it's one of my classes I'm big on now, like to talk about. I'm not saying I never will. I don't know what's going to be, but that's why I have yet to use, and I do not plan on using ChatGPT for the exact reason you just asked. What would I bring back? The answer is innocence. I wish I would have gone a certain direction and not fallen to something. And here it is happening again in front of me, an opportunity to jump into something that I feel like if I do that, I'm going to get sucked into that. And it's just going to take me like asking ridiculous questions. Who knows what knows who? You know what? It's okay. I could be lacking a little bit. Lose convenience in order to have meaning. That's my personal feeling.
Lose convenience in order to have meaning. Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, what is this? What is technology? Technology is convenience. It's not about meaning and purpose. It's
right.
It's
I want to share with you. I started using AI. Very interestingly, I use it for my podcast because, after I'm done editing a podcast, what I do is I drop it into AI and it does a transcription and it does, notes, class notes, right. And it really is, it's an amazing technology because there are times that it gives a summary of the hour-long class that in a million years I wouldn't be able to come up with such accuracy and such creativity of how to package what I just said. It really is like I'm dumbfounded by the brilliance that's in it. It listened to a 60-minute class or a 90-minute class. In 3 minutes, it gave me every word, the entire summary of everything that was said. It gives you options of time. It's absolutely brilliant. So I think it's a great use of the human mind to try to create such an artificial intelligence. But there's definitely great. But like everything in this world, there needs to be. So I'll tell you one of the big challenges that I've heard many people, because I talk about filters all the time. I talk about having a safety net to ensure that we don't fall from it. I have, by the way, on my phone a setting that on every app that I'm on, it'll pop up every 5 minutes how long I've used it for.
Nice.
So there's a constant reminder, and I keep on working on making it less and less, lowering that number. Even yesterday, late in the day, it said that on a certain app, I was only on it for 15 minutes, which is it's an app that I need and I use regularly to communicate, but I want it to be as minimal as possible. I don't want to be dependent on it. But one of the things that I've been asked many times, okay, so Rabbi, you're going to tell me now that your children, you're going to try to keep them away from a smartphone. You try to keep them away. Aren't you limiting them? Aren't you, taking away their ability to, right. So my answer to that is, well, I also try to keep them away from cocaine.
That's right. Yeah, we share the exact answer.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. I ask kids in the class, I say, at what age do you plan on giving your kids cocaine? That's exactly the question. So you always have these kids say, it's 16, okay. The answer is, well, no, that's different. That's the classic response. So my response is okay, well, what's different about it? And it's just a back and forth of just understanding values and what's important to you and whatever it is. Of course, I'm limiting myself when I'm not eating certain things, but that's keeping me alive. And of course, I'm limiting myself when I'm not going certain places. That's keeping me pure. And of course, I'm limiting myself. Everything we do is a limitation. Everything we do is, quote unquote, brainwashing for our kids not to run in the street. Brainwash them not to have drugs. Brainwash them, whatever. Yeah, because you understand the value system. Be careful with that. But again, this is the type of thing I just go on and on. But I
think it's important for our listeners to hear that.
So I say, just as a succinct, straightforward, although this is always a hot topic, when I speak to students because I also do teach 18-year-olds, a lot of them now, but I teach them only once a week, right? So I teach them once a week, so they're able to handle it still. It's the hottest topic in the world to understand the fact that, and again, I'm guilty. I have it. Do you understand? I'm trying to wean myself off. Whatever it is, I just think it can be used. It can be a good tool, but again, everything is a question of convenience. So let's go back to when we were a little bit younger, and you didn't have apps. They didn't exist. And you didn't have phones. And you didn't have smartphones. And you didn't have cell phones. And you didn't have whatever. So what'd you do if you had to go to the bank? What'd you do? You got in your car, you drove to the bank. You had to find a parking spot, you had to go in. You could deal with the people, you had to then come back home. Let's say the whole thing took 45 minutes. Let's even say that's the case. It's usually less traffic. It depends which city you're living in. Let's say it takes 45 minutes to do that. Okay, no problem. So you're if I would have had the app, I could have got that done in 12 seconds. I agree. Now my question for you is just go into your settings and look at your, the screen time. And look how you spent 6 hours on everything else. You lost an hour by not having a smartphone. you gained 5 by not having a smartphone, right? So just do the math, right? And say, some people say, no, what's considered valuable, what's not. I'm not here to tell you anyone what to do. Do whatever you want. Make your own choices, right? I tell my students, I had a student came up to me and said, like, wow, your mom has changed my life. You helped me in that way. I said, don't blame me for your success, but also don't blame me for your failure. You understand? It's all on you. You succeeded, it's on you. You failed, it's on you. Or from Berlavsky, he said it another way, but whatever. He's going to take us there, so we'll come back. So, if you decide to go ahead and make a choice, you disagree with me, do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just laying out a concept. Of course, I care about every person. You guys are so special. Everyone's like, yeah, the shama. But I mean to say is, you make your own choices, but at least be honest about it. Just be real. Be real. The reality is, am I gaining from this or losing from this? And that's why I said before, you are losing convenience and you are gaining meaning. Let me say it differently. I am losing convenience and I am gaining meaning when I'm not beholden to it. Mm-hmm. Somebody asked me once, and this threw me off. I'm sure you have students ask this, because this was college students asked this question. I gave a whole class. It was a whole group of college students from all over the U.S. in Israel. It was some sort of fellowship, something or other. It wasn't even an age. It was J internship. I don't even know what it was. And a girl asked, I was giving a class on a kursato, like gratitude. It had nothing to do with anything. And this girl asked, what's your favorite mitzvah? I was like, what? I'd never been asked that question. I never thought about it. I mean, after a moment, I realized maybe it's like chalitza or something like that, whatever that means. Anyway, the point is...
Can I tell you what your favorite mitzvah is? I can tell you right away. What's your favorite? To love Hashem, your God. Because every mitzvah, why do you put on tefillin? Why do you have a mitzvah on your door? Why do we learn Torah?
First of all, you're assuming that I do all that. But yes.
I'm making a wild assumption.
I do take a break every week. I don't put on tefillin at least once a week. I'm just letting you know that. That would be Shabbos. It's because the loving the Lord your God. It could be also it could be because of fearing the Lord your God. It could be because of Mrs. Anashim Limuda. You're right.
I understand, but
you're right as a basis, as a
foundation.
As a foundation that I'm doing it because of the fact that the Lord Almighty. Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to buy your love thing here. I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to push back on it.
That's fine.
But let's say it's true. But it's certainly not consciously true. My favorite mitzvah consciously is Shabbos. And the reason is because I do not have technology. That is the main reason. My happiest moment of the week and the saddest moment of the week is exactly the same moment. It is when we say the words V'hu Rachum at the beginning of the evening service when Shabbat is about to leave. Because it's 25 hours removed from this silliness of technology of computers and of phones and whatever. So I'm the furthest away, which gives me the furthest freedom, but I'm minutes away from falling right back in. And then somebody goes, well, then don't do it. I'm like, don't do cocaine. Is it like I opened the drugs? So you say, if you can go back and whatever the wording was, take with you something, or the way I look at it is
bring it back.
Yeah, bring it back. Make your life great again. Whatever slogan you want to use. The answer is I'd like to bring back that the lack of addiction. I don't know. I think I don't do drugs. I don't have addiction to drugs. Anyone who started a drug knows that challenge that they have to deal with, or alcohol that the challenge, whatever it is.
You know what? My children every once in a while, once in a blue moon, they'll ask me. They'll bring me the tablet and they'll say, can we watch something? Can we watch the baseball game? And I always tell them, till I don't see sweat dripping down from your forehead, I said, you get nothing. I said, go outside. You're a healthy 11-year-old boy.
You're saying, ride a bike.
Ride a bike. Get out your baseball. Get out your glove.
Listen, everything has to be done, and like you said, we have to figure out what's going on. So I think there's a difference between a kid, let's say, having their own device where they're just open to anything, or where they could have time to, let's say, watch a game or whatever it is. I personally, this is a very... Anyone who's actually listening to this in its entirety, to the following sentence, which I know people would like to cut out certain things, listen to the entirety. Everything depends on the kid and the place and the situation and all that jazz. But I'm pointing out is that I do believe that there is a concept of outlets. And I do believe that for some kids living in some places, going through some things, that it can be very good. I'd rather you watch a basketball game than have another outlet, right? In which case, that's what they say. Yeah, go play ball, go ride a bike or whatever. But yeah, you want to watch a soccer thing or a basketball thing, whatever it is. Okay, we'll work it out. That should take over your life. It can't be that this is the ikr. I was just talking with one of my kids. This is amazing. I don't know if you have a script, but I'm just talking.
No, it's perfect.
So I'll tell you that I was walking with my children the other day, and there is so much that is necessary. Does this hear it? Did you hear
this? We have a coffee shop next door.
No, but do you hear this on this? Is it impact?
I hopefully not. Yeah. But it's at 3:00. We're right now 3:00 on Friday. They're closing up. So the noise they make is like, we don't record between 2:55 and 3:15 because they're moving the chairs back and forth.
You're okay?
Yeah, it's fine. I think we're good. Hopefully it's not picking it up.
We'll let it roll.
Silence.
So anyway, this is last week. I was walking to shul with my son. He asked me if he could join us in the soccer league.
How old is he?
11 years old. Mm-hmm. This boy's 11. And he said, can I join a soccer league? So I said, he has a friend who plays in a thing. Can I join? So I said, who, what, where, when, why, and how? Like, who are the kids? Who's the coach? Where's the place? Like, what? Give me information. He's like, I don't know. That's very informative. Well, in that case, let me know. So he said, why do you want it? Why do you want to know? Why do you want it? Like, what does it matter who it is? So I said to him, listen, why are we here? This is like an 11-year-old kid. They're like, what are we doing? So I said, why are we here? As you would say again in Houston, ¿Por qué nosotros aquí en el mundo? ¿Cuál es el punto? Like, what is the point? The Lord Almighty created us, and here we are. And the question is, for what? So he said, well, I guess like to, whatever the classic, mitzvahs, Torah, Hashem, whatever. I said, listen, we are here for one purpose. There's a game called Tofestet in Hebrew, and in English it's called tag. The goal of our life is tag. That's why we're here. Torah, Avoda, and Gemilas Chasadim. That is the only reason. The studying of Torah, the service of praying, speaking to God, and interacting with others in a positive light, which opens up different areas of a relationship with me and God, me and others, me and self. This is a morale right in the beginning. So, of us. So, 1, 2, Shimon Asadik. Torah Avodah Gemilas Chasadim. He's like, wow, that's so cool. I said, yeah, so our goal is to play tag. That's why we're here. Sorry. We are here to play tag. He said, okay. I said, so obviously that means you can't use the bathroom. Right? Because where does that fit? Is that study of Torah? Is that praying? Is that Gemilas Chasadim, kind acts? He's like, he said to me, yeah, but that's like the misharet. That's like the thing that serves those things. I was like, yeah, right. Right, that's correct. Those things are there that serve those things. He goes, so I'm like, okay, so then what about eating? Are you allowed to eat? Are you allowed to sleep? Are you allowed to walk? Can you go for a walk? Can you play soccer? Are you allowed to do all these things? Where does it fit in tag? The goal is Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. If you're out of the box, then you're doing the opposite of the reason you exist. So he said, okay, but sometimes you need to be able to relax in order to be able to focus. And he's 11. It's not like, I said, 100%, that's 100% correct. So do you have a desire to do drugs? He goes, I told this to one of my students.
Like, huh?
I said to my students. My students are like, you said it to an 11-year-old? I said, well, what age should I say it? What age? So someone's like 15. I was like 16. I was like 17. I was like 18. I'm like, you see? There's no answer, right? The answer is, do you think the kid can handle the conversation, right? You have to have a conversation. Why wait till they're doing the drugs to ask them? Like, let's talk about it before. Preemptively understand what the world is, and obviously you don't give it to them, but understand what it is so they could have the strength to be able to overcome it. He said, no. I said, you understand, once you pop, you can't stop, right? That's good old Pringles, right? Once you pop, you can't stop. It's very hard once you start something to stop it. So what about if no one, you didn't really want to do it, but all your friends were doing it? I said, well, you think you would do it? He said, well, lachatz chevrati. I said, yeah, it's like peer pressure. We live in Israel, by the way, so that's the half Hebrew going on. Lachatz chevrati. So I said, so you mean you could fall to do something even though you don't have a desire to do it? He said, yeah, I guess. I said, and that could be something which will take you away from tag, correct? He said, well, yeah, I guess. I said, that's why I just want to know who's the coach, who are the players, where are you going? If it ends up being that these are people that are on board, they're going the right direction also. Not only am I okay with you playing, I encourage you to play. I'll bring you there. I'll buy you cleats. I'll pay for the whatever membership, and I'll get the ball, and I'll cheer you on. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great. Like you're saying, sweat, go out, run, have a good time. But don't forget what the point is, and that's why you have to be careful. Who are you hanging out with? What are you hanging out with? I call this in one of my classes totally the noun that built you or the noun that killed you. Not as in a kilt that you wear and whatever, but as in it's going to build you or kill you. Who's the person, place, or thing? Who's the person? That better watch out, stay away from them. Where's the place? Stay away from it. What's the thing? Stay away. And let's flip it the other way. Who's the person, place, or thing that get close to? Right. So you have to be careful with these things. That's it. Of course, everything is a tool and can be used and whatever. And that's why I don't say, I know Aser, ChatGPT, and AI, as if I have any sort of power to do that. I'm not saying it all. And my wife wants to use it, go ahead. And if someone wants it, go ahead. I'm just saying for me, like based on your question.
It's funny because I've declared in my class, I told my students, they know this, that I made a commitment to never go to Las Vegas. So they're like, what's the problem with Las Vegas? I'm like, any place that calls itself Sin City, I don't want to be there.
Wow.
I just don't want to be there. Wow. You could have called so many things. Like you could say gambling city. You could have called you call yourself Sin City, I'm out. Okay, I just don't want to be there. Doesn't mean that someone who goes there is a sinner. It doesn't mean that there are great people who live there. I know actually rabbis who live there, friends who live there, and who do great things. Yeah. Right? But for me personally, that's not where I want to be. So, like you're saying, person, place, and thing.
That's big.
Right?
That's big. It's amazing is that it all depends on the listener. What do people hear? That was big for me.
I wonder, my dear friends, listeners, please share with us what you think. Like, some people might think we're crazy. Like, what's wrong with these people? Like, limitations they're putting in their lives. So I wanted to ask you a question. We talked offline before take one. We talked about you went to Poland last week.
Yeah.
And you visited that's right, just a couple of days ago. Yeah. Prior to coming to Houston, you were in Poland. And, the Holocaust, we just had Yom HaShoah. Every day is Yom HaShoah, basically, for the Jewish people. It's like it wasn't...
currently with what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you feel is the most important lesson that we need to have learned from the Holocaust?
This is like no holds barred. Take the gloves off. Stick, gloves, shirt. This is unbelievable.
I'll tell you, I'm a grandchild of survivors. Okay, 3 of my grandparents were in the ghettos. My grandmother was in the Covenant ghetto, and I had my two maternal grandparents who were in Auschwitz. It's a reality that is being forgotten. Unfortunately, our children they're not as cognizant of it as we were. But the question is, it's another thing of whether or not we should be telling it to our children and reminding them. Today, unfortunately, there are plenty of reminders on our college campuses all over the world. There's too many reminders of that hate and that, So
this is big. This is a very big topic, which I'm going to err on the side of caution. This is a conversation that I would have for the 199ers, in person. I don't know about online, but the 199 Club. The way that the direction that I take when I go to Europe and we go to the various locations. This time we were in a few places in Prague and in Warsaw and
Auschwitz, Birkenau,
and all the different Treblinka. I didn't go to Treblinka. About Majdanek and wow,
there were 44,000 camps.
We didn't hit all of them. Yeah, we didn't hit all of them. We had maybe 4 of them. Anyway, it's a question of what now. That's the way that I always take it. I do find sometimes there could be a misunderstanding of someone goes to the camp, you cry and whatever. For me, it's like, what are you going to take from this? Which is your question. So what? In other words, now what? Everything that we go through in our life is there for a reason. So to ask why did someone go through the Holocaust 80 years ago is this is, I have to be so careful how I word this. People are very sensitive, and I'm also sensitive, just less sensitive than others in this area. In other areas, maybe more sensitive. In any event, to ask the question of why the Holocaust and all that kind of stuff, and what can I learn from what? Not that it had nothing to do with me. It did. My grandmother was one of my grandparents was born in Poland and went through in Poland. Her father, my great grandfather, 3 other grandparents are Americans, which is it's amazing. American, how far they go back. But anyway, gosh, how do I answer this directly? This is a very difficult thing to say because people won't like me. Just take from your life. What are you meant to learn from your life? I don't know it's about the Holocaust per se. It's a matter of every circumstance somebody finds themselves in, they have to ask, what am I meant to learn from this and how do I grow from this? I just saw a clip from a Rav. I don't know. It was a part of maybe a Torah Anytime Daily Dose or something about Rabbi Yerachmiel Milstein was giving a talk somewhere, and a kid asked, why did God make my life so hard if he loves me? You're saying God loves him. Why did I make my life so hard? And he wanted to describe, this kid went through a lot of painful experiences through his childhood from his mother, and then he was foster home and then back in his parents, and really, it sounded
challenging.
Very challenging. So he said, why, if you really loved me, why would you do that? And he said, the Lashon of the Rav who's saying this over, so he looked at Shimon and said, Hashem, I need your help on this. How do I answer this in front of tons of people? And this boy's name was Yoshi. So he said, just imagine the following scene. You're driving down the road, and it's a hot day. So you decide to stop at a Barnes and Nobles. Does that still exist?
Yep.
You decide to stop
a few
at
of them.
Barnes and Nobles, which is like a bookstore that people can read and get coffee, apparently. I don't really know much about it, but Barnes and Nobles. And you decide to stop there, get yourself an iced coffee, which is different than Israel, by the way. Israel, iced coffee is ice cream. Anyway, but here it's just like coffee with ice. And get yourself an iced coffee and read some books, and you get there. And you see that there's one table in the middle that's glowing. That's the main attraction. And you go up to see, what is it? This is the main thing. And when you look at the title, it says, The Story of Yoshi's Life. From abused child to successful whatever it is.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah. And it's the story of his life. And he goes through and says, everything in there is for you to be able to grow from it and to take from it and to learn. And how can I go forward from this? The way, I'll give you one lesson. It should be Ili Nishmas, my great aunt, has passed away. Her name is Esther. You'll know who it is, Esther Waxman. If you remember the name, Nachshon Waxman, the soldier.
Sure.
So Esther Waxman was my great aunt. She just passed away. Wow. And she used to say, and I said,
Hannah Waxman's mother?
What's that?
It was his mother?
Nachshon Waxman's mother.
Nachshon Waxman's mother.
Yeah, Nachshon Waxman's mother's Esther Waxman.
Wow.
It's my grandmother's
I talked about Nachshon Waxman a couple of times. I remember that vividly, that whole, wow, what a special man.
I'm not going to be Megala, but I imagine he was your age exactly. It could be he was maybe 2 years older than you.
Yeah.
So no, I'll leave blank what that means. But but the point is that the national. So he's my first cousin once removed, but much closer in age to me than my mother. He's 7 years old, 7 years older than me. And he was a soldier. He was kidnapped. He was killed. There's Hamas. This is 30 years ago. This isn't like now. And Esther Waxman, a great aunt, who just passed away, she said, she used to quote Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, who would say in Kapitel Chaf Beis, chapter 22 in Psalms written by King David, really written originally by Esther Hamalka, this one, chapter 22.
Queen Esther.
Queen Esther, who writes, Keli, Keli, lama azaftani. God, why have you forsaken me? Whatever the storyline is, she uses that type of wording. Why have you forsaken me? And Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, the great rabbinical sage living in Germany from 1808, 1888, 1800s, came and he said, no, you don't read it lama zaftani, you read it lema. In Hebrew, you could always, the vowels change everything, a couple lines and dots. Lama is why, lema means for what. Same letters, different pronunciation. Not lama, not why did you forsake me, but for what? In other words, what am I meant to learn from here and grow from here? So you say, like, do we learn about the Holocaust? Should we not learn about the Holocaust? What's the thing? My question for whoever's asking the question is, well, why do you want to teach them about the Holocaust? What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? To show them that we went through Gehenna? I don't even know what I'm allowed to say. Went through heck. You know, to tell them we went through painful experiences. That's the reason. Why would you do that? You know, like, what are you going to show videos of October 7th? What's the point? Why are you showing them that? To show them that they hate us? We know that full well. Like, you don't need to. Oh gosh, you don't need to see the video in order to know. Am I the only one that does that?
No, it's fine.
Okay,
it's fine.
You don't need to see the videos in order to know these things. We know that there are people out there that want to kill us, whatever it is. So why do you want them to know? Never forget. You know,
right.
Never forget. Right. Never forget. What do you want me not to forget? What should I not forget? That we went through the most terrible. If anyone knows what happened in the Holocaust or October 7th, it is horrific. You want me to think about that? What, I should go to sleep with that in my mind? Like, what's the point? For what? Le ma. For what? What do you want me to do that for? So if you're telling me there's something I can learn from it, maybe there's a reason it happened. Maybe there's some way I could behave differently. Maybe there's something I can do. Okay, now we're talking. But that's where the conversation gets 100%. Very hot. And that has to be done, I think, more one-on-one than in a forum like this.
No, 100%. Yeah. I totally agree. That's why I have my pin for the hostages, is to not forget one of them, and to remember that every time I teach a class, I dedicate every single class. You look in the description of these is to the soldiers and to the hostages, and they can't learn the Torah that we're learning. They can't do the mitzvahs that we're doing. They're locked up someplace in a dungeon, and we're doing it in their honor so that they can hopefully get out of there safely.
But I will respond to that and say that's from some of the stories that we've heard from those who have survived and come
Unbelievable
out,
stories.
They are doing a lot more than I'm doing.
They are.
So he said, like, well, they can't be doing what we're doing. The answer is, you're right. We can't even touch what they're doing. Right. They're if anything, they should have on the bottom of their thing, for an Eloi of the neshama of like those who are not in captivity. I mean, It's just unbelievable. It's really amazing. This the one story I saw of Sapir Cohen. And if you know Sapir, she was Hashem. She was let out after 55 days in captivity. She was one of the first deals in the beginning. Sapir Cohen, look it up and watch her interview on your non-technology that you don't have anymore after this podcast, and it is amazing. She writes in there how, I mean, there's so much to talk about with what she said. But one of the questions she was asked is, how did you survive, and deal with this situation? She goes, listen, she was in the tunnels, and she said being in the tunnels is like, it's dark, it's hard to breathe, there's not air, we had nothing to eat. But there's one thing, is that I believe in God. And I said, God never told me that I'm going to get everything that I want. God never told me I'm always going to be happy. But the one thing I do know is that everything God does has purpose. So I understood that if I'm here, there's a purpose. There's something I'm meant to do with it, which I think goes back to what you said about the Holocaust idea. It's just an amazing concept.
Amazing.
No matter where we are in our life, there's a purpose, there's a meaning. There's somebody driving slow in front of you, there's a reason for that. You go to 3 banks to try to take out money, it doesn't work. Like happened to me today, there's a meaning for that. It could be because I have no money in the account. Maybe I should just give it up. But the point is, like, there's a reason. And what do I take from this? And that's why I say lima. That's why I say Lila Nishmas Esther. For what? What is the Esther Bas Aaron? What is the goal of what we're trying to accomplish over here? Yeah, which I think is a life mission. Lema, for what? Not lama. Lama's a child question. Why? There's no answer to a why question. It's just because. And they say in Hebrew, lama, gacha, lama. Why? Because. Why? You didn't say anything. Lema. Oh, now let's formulate that. Let's work that out. Let's try to think.
Amazing.
What can I do with that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned.
I must say this has been great. I'm enjoying this because I like I like that it's not just. I like it.
It's not linear.
Yeah, I like the non-linear fashion. Yeah.
Great. You mentioned before that your favorite and most dreaded time is the end of Shabbos. So I think, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that the most important mitzvah that anchors a Jew is Shabbos. And we're coming close to Shabbos in just 4 hours. But so one of the things that I love to ask the people who join us on our Sunday special is what perspective can they share with us, meaning our listeners, me and our listeners, to enhance our Shabbos. Meaning, if I'm talking to somebody whose ordinary weekend means going to the beach on Shabbos, going to run errands on Shabbos, picking up my cleaners, going to a movie, things like that. It's not per se, for some, the observance of Shabbos where I lock down for 25 hours, but rather it's something else. What would you tell such a person of why they should try a Shabbos? You're here. You're talking to the audience. You say, okay, look at the camera and say, this is why you should try Shabbos. This is why God gave us Shabbos.
Okay. Which camera should look at this one? Shabbos, the way that the great sages explain the Holy Torah is the description of Shabbos is Me'ein Olam Haba. That means it's a small piece of heaven in everyone's heart, glorious gift from above. This is an incredible gift. Ba Shabbos, ba Menucha. Come Shabbos, comes a state of rest, a state of relaxation, and really of recharging. That's the way that, anyway, Or Chaim HaKadosh, Rav Chaim Ben Attar, a great sage of the 1700s, comes and explains that Shabbos is like the battery, it's the matzber, it's the, or in modern Hebrew, bateria. I think it's also Italiano and also Espanol. It's the battery, it gives you, it recharges us. Now, it's important to understand, because I understand the question that someone would ask is, well, for me, recharging is playing PlayStation or driving, taking a nice drive. Okay, I definitely hear that. I enjoy a good PlayStation and a good drive. There's no question about it. But it's important to understand that this is not solely the physical. This is a connection of physical and metaphysical. These are the type of ideas that a person would have to actually experience to fully appreciate. And the reason why you'd want to try to do it is because of the menucha that would come from it. We're all looking for a sense of meaning, of purpose, contentment, the ultimate relationship that we can have in this world with the creator of the world, which is everything, is on Shabbos. So it's something which I think has to be tried. It's like asking somebody, what's a sunset? And what is whale watching? Not in that tank where they keep them in like California. But I mean, you go out to the ocean and you watch the whales out there. What's it like? I can't describe it to you. You know what I'm saying? It's me'ein olam haba. It's the top of the top. But the only way to really feel that is to go all in. If a person doesn't go, it's commensurate. The more that you give is the more you're going to get. And that's why every little thing we do is valuable and worthwhile, going in that direction, trying it out. The closer we get to the goal, and when we hit that top, that's what we say is me'ein olam haba. I do have a little joke to make, which is not a joke, so you'll decide to edit this or not. I probably shouldn't say this, so therefore I'll say it. For those who feel like Shabbos is like, again, I don't know what word I'm allowed to say here, but heck, it's like Gehenna.
Dread.
Well, it's important to use this word, because if it feels like that, that's because it's me'ein olam haba. It's giving you a small taste of what your next world's going to be like. So if it feels miserable, just understand what the next world's going to feel like. The lashon of the Gemara is, the words of the Gemara are that Misha Meichin be'erev Shabbos tochel b'Shabbos. Is that right? Is that close? Those who prepare on, how do you say it?
Yochal b'Shabbos.
Yochal b'Shabbos. Those who prepare on Friday will have what to eat on Saturday. Shabbos is, like we said, the next world. And now I'm past my pitch, and I don't know if I did a good 60-second elevator pitch. But the next world is called Yom Shekulo Shabbos, the day which is all Shabbos. There's nothing more to do. You can't prepare anymore. So whatever you prepare is what you have. So the example I like to give is if you go camping, right? If you go on a trip somewhere, whatever you pack is what you have. When you get to the campsite and you say, I wish I had more of something. Sorry, you don't have it. Whatever you have, whatever you bring with you is what you have. So did you prepare on Friday in order to be able to have on Shabbos? Because you can't cook, you can't clean, you can't work, can't whatever. And that's just a small little analogy of the next world. What did you put your time in this world? If you never lived that, The contrast of I don't do anything on Shabbos, that for 6 days I prepare and on the 7th I rest completely, then we have a hard time understanding what it means in the next world. And then our whole life will be a life where we're not really focused on actually getting anything. So therefore, we do a practice run every single week where we prepare, come Friday, sunset, stop, drop, and roll. That's if you're on fire. But if you're not on fire, then you just stop. Stop everything you're doing, and then we just go into Shabbos. I can't do it anymore. A little bit of a reminder. Oh, wait, my whole life. Once the clock stops ticking, whatever I took with me is what I have. And I believe it was David HaMelech who said it. Kilo b'moso yikach hakol. That was David, right?
Right,
King David. Lo yered acharav kivodo. That when a person dies, you're not taking with you your honor, whatever. The only thing you're taking with you is tag. Torah avodah gemilas chasadim. The Torah that you learned, the service of prayer, and the idea of kind acts that we do with other people. If you never stop, then you never notice that. I think there was an article in the New York Times years ago that said, studies have shown it's a good idea to take off 1 day a week. Yeah, it's a study called the Torah. Yeah, it's a good idea.
It's funny that you say that because we say in our Shabbos morning prayer, we say Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelko. Right? What is it referring to? Our sages say that Moshe told Pharaoh, he negotiated with Pharaoh one day off for the Jewish people when they were enslaved in Egypt. And it turned out that the day that he took off was the Shabbos. And that every week they had a Shabbos. Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelko. He was so elated that he was able to align his spiritual connection of the day of Shabbos with the actual day that it was. And it's such a powerful thing to recognize that our batteries need to shut off. Our batteries of creative labor, of productivity, needs to stop, and you need to just be for a day.
Yeah, listen. There's two different areas of how you answer a question. You can be intellectual, you can be emotional. I think it's much more effective emotional, but I think it's important to speak of the intellectual. The intellectual is that there is a thing called there is something called God, and God created the world, and God created me, and God is a manufacturer, and God said this is the ultimate best for you, and as a matter of fact, this is where things get a little hot and heavy. But God is also the king. He's Avinu. He loves us deeply. He's also the king, which means the king tells us to do something, even if I don't understand it. I understand the fact that you're the king. I'm here. Long live the king. I come and I serve the king. So I think most will connect more with an emotional approach, including myself. But I do think it's important to be aware of it's not just a nice thing.
Oh, but that could be said about every mitzvah in the Torah 100%, as well.
100%. And Rav Hirsch writes that in Horeb, on page 331, at the end of his whole essay on kashrus and laws of kosher. And he says, all these are meditations and speculations and perhaps flow from the lack of insight into the deeper nature of things, giving examples of why it would be eat kosher or not eat kosher. However that may be, one thing is eternal and immutable. Those are the laws of God himself. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, at the end of the day, you can never say the reason why I'm doing something is an emotional reason. Because if the reason you're doing something is an emotional reason, then when you don't feel like it, you don't do it. The reason we do something is because, get ready for it, get ready for the truth bomb, because it's the truth. We are meant to do the right thing. Even if I don't feel like it, I'm still meant to do the right thing. And if God tells me to do something, that by definition means it's the right thing. Now we can get into what we call ta'amei mitzvos, the reasons or the taste to be able to feel connected with it on an emotional level, which is super important. Hashem wants our heart, like we said. But it can't be that the reason I keep Shabbos is because I just love being with my family. And what happens when Shabbat, when you're not with your family? You don't keep it. And the reason why I go ahead and eat kosher is because it feels like I'm gliding on ice when the Zamboni just came off. What happens when it's rough? And the reason why, so the bottom line is the reason I do something is this is the emes, this is the truth. And I'm looking to live a life of truth, which is why we take it back to much earlier in the discussion about what would I change, whatever it is. I said, everyone, you want to have technology, you want to do this, do whatever you want, but at least be honest with yourself, be real. And understand that it could be that I'm doing something which is a bad idea right now, but I want to. Okay, But be honest. Just say like, I am doing the wrong thing and I'm giving into my base physical desires. Okay, at least you're being real. And now you can decide whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it. So what's my elevator pitch for Shabbos is the same elevator pitch for all of Judaism. It's the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. It's all from Hashem. So therefore, why do I do what I do? The answer is because the baseline reason why I do it, and I believe some say it's all about the base. The baseline reason why I do something is because it's the truth. And then I try to go ahead and connect myself to those ideas. And sometimes the rabbis will help me with certain ideas that will, give us ideas. You have the Sefer Chinuch, a really good book, which goes through different explanations. I'm sure there's many English translations that go through stuff. And as I think Rav Berkowitz once said, I remember hearing the Hillel Rebbe saying, imagine you've mentioned his name once or twice on this podcast, that he said, you can find any reason for a mitzvah if it's going to help you do it. It's just, don't let it be that that's the only thing you're doing. It's just if that's going to enhance your doing it, okay, Sean, go for it.
We actually just had an episode in one of our podcasts about lishma. What does it mean to do things altruistically? Which means the essence, the core reason why we do any mitzvah is because God commanded.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
Now, it happens to be that I feel an emotional connection to that mitzvah. That's great. Yeah. But that's not why you do it.
Right. So the one thing that I'm adding to it, which I imagine you said this, but I'm just repeating is, for me to say, because God said so, we all have that aversion, that kickback. But it's not just because God said so, it's because it's the truth. God saying it makes it the truth. So now it's just, you just work it in there. Because God said so. So what if God said so? And it's just, because that's the truth. Well, I don't want to do the truth. You're never going to be happy not living the truth. We are hardwired to live truth. Nobody feels good living a lie. We maybe feel a rush and a dopamine, adrenaline, or whatever it is from doing something because it's like, did I get away with something, whatever? But it's never long term. It's a very quick, and even then, there's always a feeling of guilt or whatever. The question is whether we realize it or we've buried our emotions so deeply that they're not willing to see that. But everybody wants to live truth. You look at a child, they're uncomfortable to tell a lie. It's uncomfortable for them. It's only once they learn how to get used to it. But it's like, you tell them something isn't true, they point it out to you. I remember I told my kid a joke once. It wasn't really a joke. It's probably a mean thing to do. But we were outside, and my kid was looking up at the moon. I said, "You like it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You want it?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Just jump." "Jump?" He goes, just jump. He starts jumping. I went inside. I come back like 20 minutes later. He's out of breath jumping. I'm like, "What happened?" He's like, "At the moon." I said, "Well, you still jumping for the moon?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I was just joking." He said, "What does that mean? Why'd you lie to me?" I said, No, I didn't lie. It's a joke." He said, "What's a joke?" It's like, "Well, it's like a lie, but a funny one. Like, what's a joke?" I'm not kidding. It was a few days later. He comes home, and he's like, he was in school, kindergarten, gone. He comes back, he goes, "Today somebody died." I said, "What?" He goes, "I'm just joking." I said, "No, you're not allowed to do it." He goes, "Why not?" I'm like, "I'm not sure, but that's against the rules." So we teach our kids to lie. They're hurt by it until then they get used to it. And then we cover it over. Everybody understands what truth is. We don't feel right. We look over our shoulders. It's an uncomfortable thing. What kind of life is it living a life? That's why we say the truth will set you free. What does that mean? I'm not stuck by anything. I'm not bound by anything. Right. I feel totally at ease. I don't feel locked up. I'm free. The truth will set you free. So why do I keep Shabbos? It's just because it's the truth. Oh, it's also, by the way, Me'ein Olam Haba. It's also going to give you like a taste of the world to come, and it's also comfortable, and it's also like relaxing, so all that kind of jazz. But if those don't work, it doesn't matter. I'm still keeping Shabbos. And it's to a level that some people can't even fathom. If you grew up religious, you'll understand this. If someone didn't, they may not understand this idea. There's a whole story they say about Kivi Bernhard. You know the story with Kivi Bernhard?
No.
Yes, you do.
No.
Yes, you do. So Kivi Bernhard, here's the story. There's a guy named Kivi Bernhard. He's from South Africa. It's a lovely yid. Yes, very nice place. Nice person. And this guy, Kivi Bernhard, he's a speaker, and he wrote a book called Leopardology. It's, you know what I'm telling you.
Oh, the plane.
Very famous.
Yeah.
So this is a rush through the story. The point is that he was invited to speak for Microsoft as a speaker, and they have this every 2 years of this big gathering. And they said to him, can you do it? And went through the secretary, and they made a mistake, and they booked it. Then afterwards he looked and he saw it was on Friday night and it's with a microphone and it's in a place and like he wouldn't be able to do it because it's Shabbos. He can't be on the microphone and the thing and the whatever it was going to be a lot of things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So he called up. He said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but there seemed to be a mistake in the thing. I'm not be able to do it on Friday night. If you want to do it on Sunday, you want to do it on Saturday, any
Saturday
other night,
night.
Exactly Saturday night, right? Any other time but from Friday till Saturday sundown, right? I can't do it." The guy's like, "Okay." Now they thought he was playing a tactic. They said, "Okay, we'll double it. We'll double your fee."
And his fee was steep.
Yeah, he had whatever. I don't know. I think it's $25,000, something like that. Like it was for Microsoft, whatever. So he goes, "We'll double it." And he's like, "I really can't do it." "Okay, we'll triple it." He's like, "Okay, can you move it to Saturday night and triple it?" You know, it's like I can't. So this goes on, and they keep going up. And finally, the VP of Microsoft calls him up. Says, "What are you doing? Like, we need this thing." He's like, "I'm really sorry. I can't do it." So he's like, "Well, you're really playing hardball with us." He's like, "I'm not playing hardball. I just can't do it. It's Saturday, Friday night to Saturday night. I can't. It's my Sabbath, my Shabbat." So they basically said, "Can you move it?" He goes, "We've been working on this for a year and a half. We can't move it." Like Bill Gates himself was probably going to be there. It's a whole thing. He can't. He says, "I'm really sorry. I can't do it." His secretary, who's not Jewish, said, "Are you sure just this time, Kiwi? You can't do it? Like, this is a lot of money." He says, "I can't do it." And they ended up moving the day. And he spoke on another day. I don't know. I think it's probably for the original fee. Probably even less because I got upset at him. I don't know how it worked out. Okay, this story, the VP then ended up on a plane with Bill Gates. And Bill Gates wasn't there for it, but he had heard this. And he says, "Wow, I never met a person that doesn't have a price. This Shabbat thing must be pretty special." That's the story. Now, I could have said that slower and more emotional and more whatever, but I'm nauseated by the story. I'll tell you why. Any religious Jew would do exactly, there's nothing inspirational about that. That's something like, what are you talking about?
It's like, wow, he gave up $75,000.
$50,000, $100,000 for Shabbos. Let me tell you right now, if someone offered me $1 billion, I wouldn't break Shabbos. You wouldn't
even like, well, you wouldn't.
No, it's not even
thought.
And I said this to my students, and they're like, "What are you talking about? That makes no sense." I said, "Okay, what's your price for killing your mother?" I was like, "What?" I said, $1 billion. She's like, "I would never." I'm like, "Even for $1 billion, And it's just like, because in your value system, obviously there's different cases. My point is that in your value system, you'd never do that. So a religious Jew would never break Shabbos, even for $1 billion. I'm sure there are people that make mistakes and do wrong things all the time. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about consciously and cognitively going and do such a thing. So I'm going to keep Shabbos. Why? Because the Lord Almighty has said that that's what I got to do. And that's it. Nothing to talk about. And by the way, other things also. I've never done anything wrong. I've done things wrong. And yes, there's temptations and there's yitzharas, but also, like, we're going back to our conversation. Did you ever open the door to that? Mm-hmm. I go my whole life keeping Shabbos. So that is a big help. The fact that I don't have that as my nakuda sabachir, of my point of choice, of my challenge. Other people may have that as their challenge, and in their life, what's something that's not challenging for them is challenging for me, right? But it's also just being aware of it. There's a girl who came into my class one time. She's in the back and she says, raise her hand, a religious girl. She said, I have a hard time with speaking negatively about other people. Lashon hara, evil speech, speaking not nicely about people. So they said, what do I do? So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I take out of my bag, I had with me money. I'll give you $20 right now to speak Lashon hara. Speak bad about someone. Go ahead. Here's $20. She's like, what? No. I said, okay, I see what you're doing. I took out 40, then 60, then 80, then 100. That's all I had. So that's my bank won't give me anything. I said, I took out $100. And I said, just speak Lashon hara. Speak bad. So some guy in the back is like, I'll do it. I'm like, you would have done it for free, brother, So she's like, no. I'm like, why not? You just told me you struggle with it. She goes, yeah, but now when I'm thinking about it. I said, exactly. So start thinking about it. It's not about fighting. It was like, just be aware of what we're doing. Be aware. Okay, so my 1 minute pitch of Shabbos, even less. It's the truth. Do it. Thanks for joining us.
Cut.
Are you recording? Did we record this one?
All right. So, so I have a couple more questions, but we're ready to run long. All right.
Shabbos
that's right. There are a lot of amazing things that come to the surface when the Jewish people are facing a challenge. We faced an enormous challenge 570 days ago with the events that happened on October 7th on Simchas Torah. A lot of things that come out of the Jewish people that make us really, really proud.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that make us really, really, really concerned. What are those things for you? What are those things that make you look at you like, wow, Mikam Yisrael, the most special people in the world. And sometimes you say to yourself, I cannot believe it. This is what we're fighting about. So what are those things that you look at when you see? I'll tell you, for me personally, to see the brotherhood, the friendship, the love, because what happened right before October 7th was a terribly devastating polarization of Jews all across the country, all across the nation, and then how that came back to bridge us together was really, really exceptional. And again, we become numb to it, and it just goes back to the normal.
I wouldn't answer this on such a global scale of the entire Jewish people and whatever it is. Although, of course, Mikam Yisrael, there's who is like the Jewish people. Unbelievable, this nation that we're so tight, we're so close. It's a good sibling rivalry. That's what it is. We fight with each other. My older brother would beat me up all the time. But if someone else tried to start with me, ooh, not a chance. He would take him out. We spoke recently about this, about a couple of incidents in elementary school that kids that started with me took care of them. Whatever. I'm like, but you beat me up. What are you doing? It's because I love you. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes I love you to death. It is what it is. But the point is that we're there for that. I'm going to look at it from a different angle of your question.
That's why I want to hear it.
Yeah, of what speaks to me. I was asked to give. This was right before Pesach, and there's an organization that called me. The organization is called Kinafayim, and they called
Wings.
me Wings, and they asked if I can give a talk for a group of women, and they're located in all over the world. Maybe they have main branches, but they're located everywhere. I wanted to give a talk to give chizik, to give strength, to give words of strength for these women that have been through miscarriages, they've been through stillborns, they've been through all these different type of birthing trauma and things of the sort. And when they called me and they're asking me if I'd speak to these women about this, I was just thinking, I couldn't get in my head one thing. I'm like, who started this organization? Like an organization that's there to support people that have gone through this particular nuanced thing, right? And I also, from sure, Rabbi Burke would speak often about the gemachim that exist. Like a gemach is a free loan society, literally, but it just means an act of kindness, because there's so many things like, just it's not even a loan, it's just take it, 3:00 in the morning in Israel and your baby's crying and you need a pacifier. There's an organization that will give you a pacifier. Who has that, So when this organization called me, and then there was another one called Sister to Sister for women that have gone through divorce. And I was asked to speak at this type of thing. I was like, who set this up? Like, this is just amazing. Obviously, people go through things, and then they do. But the greatness for me is not that someone went through it, but that they actually did something about it. Because there's so many things like, I should really do this, and it isn't done. That, to me, is an amazing thing. And I think you can open up the just... in my head's a newcomer's guide, but you know what I'm saying?
I always mention that.
The Israeli...
Newcomer's Guide.
Yellow pages, whatever it is.
For chesed. It's amazing.
And you go through the alphabetical order of just like, I need help filling out my consular report of birth abroad. No problem. Call this number. You know what I mean? It's like, what? There's a number for that? And it's just amazing. I was recently going through family stuff and medical stuff, and we were in the hospital, and there's this guy. I mean, to get through to him, you have to find a way and whatever. Some Hasidic guy. And
Fisher or Fear?
No, his name is Chesky, this guy. Chesky has his own organization, Yad Avram, I think it is, or Leave, something. Anyway, he was so incredibly helpful. And the guy is just like, it was crazy. There was some sort of neurological thing. I ended up at some doctor, and I was by this doctor in his home, because I got through to someone else. And he said to me, well, what's the medication? They said, I don't remember. Hold on. And I played out a message of somebody talking. He goes, who is that? I said, that's Chesky. He goes, I know, I recognized it. Like, what do you mean? He says, yeah, he calls me in my house all the time. This is just Hasidish guy. Not a doctor, not a whatever. He calls the doctor's answer. He calls him at home. And he's just like, he's so connected. And his life is just to help people and other things. So we say, Mi Kamchi Yisrael. The whole idea of the achdus and non-achdus, that for me is a whole discussion. I have what to say about that. But the concept of who are the Jewish people? Who's like the Jewish people? Mi Kamchi Yisrael. No one's like the Jewish people. There is no one who has a diaper rash cream organization. You know what I mean? Like the Jewish people. It's just mind-boggling. And like you go into the more religious you get, the more organizations there are. And it's just astounding. So that to me is a real personal Mikam Chisol of what I went through recently, this random guy and this thing, whatever it is. It's just astounding. Yeah.
Okay, one more thing. I know that you run you are a participant in the Rosh Chodesh project.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Tell our listeners about it.
Okay, the Rosh Chodesh project. I mean, I feel bad for many of you.
No, I just right. Can I just give a quick introduction?
Sure.
So when I told my children that Rav Gav is coming to Houston and that he's going to hopefully be staying at our house, they were ecstatic. Why? Like that's Rav Gav from the Rosh Chodesh project. Apparently, somebody thought it was a great idea to have an organization.
Yeah. This is a guy named Yossi Weiss. He's originally it was in Muncie in Florida. He's going to be very upset that I'm saying his name. So that's why Yossi Weiss. Anyway, so it's so Jewish. You're not going to find him, you know. A guy who grew up in, like I mentioned, and he's in the Mir. He's learning his Torah in Eretz Yisrael for many years. And he felt that maybe it'd be good for kids to get a good boost in the areas of emunah and bitachon, which will loosely translate as faith and trust. In other words, ideas of God's existence, and not just from a cerebral understanding, but of an emotional connection to these ideas that there's a Shem, there's a God, and He's involved in your life. So we started making these films, hour films that we.
It's an hour long each one?
Hour long, each one of them. Yeah, some are 40 minutes, some are an hour and 20 minutes, you know. And it's a full-on theatrical performance. I'm not saying it's to be reckoned with. It's a big deal. And, the goal was to get it into high schools, which was impossible. So it's really hard to get into high schools. They're very tight curriculum. We ended up getting into elementary schools, those who are interested in doing it. It's a video that comes once a month, but that's why I say I feel bad for the listeners because you can't see. There are two online that you can see, which you'll be blown away by on Torah Anytime. You can find by Torah Anytime. Look up RCP on Torah Anytime. You'll find it.
Rosh Chodesh Project.
Rosh Chodesh Project, just because it's every month. That's the reason why. It was a way to slip it into the school's curriculum, you know? Mm-hmm. So as a school curriculum, it gives you like questions and answers, and the teacher's supposed to be with the students and guide them, etc. But the point is it goes through different topics. So like say Emunah and Bitachon and I'm not allowed to spill the beans about this coming one, but it could be it's Asher Yatzer, and maybe I just said it. But anyway, the point is, about the most amazing part of the human body and God's relationship with us and how much He loves us and Hakar Satov and gratitude. And we have one called Mi Kamchi Yisrael, which is all about the war, which is on that one you can see. It's on Torah Anytime. Mm-hmm. Amazing, TorahAnytime.com, RCP, whatever it is. Mi Kamchi Yisrael, if you could spell that, just phonetically spell that out. Mi Kamcha Yisrael. In any event, started off, with one school, two schools, and now we're in over 400 schools all over the world in, obviously, United States, Canada, North America, South America, which North America is the United States, Canada, but South America and also in England. Let's go with continents: Europe, Australia,
Africa.
Yeah, Africa. Yeah, the southern part generally, not usually in Western Africa, Sierra Leone, Sierra. But the point is, all over the world, over 400 schools, over 30,000 kids are involved with this. So you're looking at the
30,000.
One of the biggest Rosh Yeshivas in the world is me.
Wow.
Yeah, 30,000 kids. And when I walked into the shul yesterday, when I came, I was accosted by 30 kids coming out. RCP! I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, wow, that's a welcome. It's like nice if a guy says, hey, welcome to Houston. It's a different thing when you have like 30 kids going, I know you.
Right.
That's
very
pretty
special.
funny. So that's what it is. It's a very powerful thing, and it brings it into a deep, it brings it in not just from the mind, but the full name is Viadat.
Bring it into your heart.
Bring it to your heart. Not just to know it, but to feel it and to live it.
Amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. How can people find you online? How can people connect with your Torah study, with your Torah teachings?
Just search Rav Gav, Ravgav, or my Clark Kent name is Gavriel Friedman. If you do a search for that, you'll find a lot. Many on tour anytime. I know I'm saying quickly, but pause it and look it back. Hidabrut.com, Hidabrot,
OOT.
Yeah, OOT. It's on YouTube, spelled with a Y. Also, YouTube. And I have a website, ravgav.com, but I haven't done anything with it in like 7 years. So you'll go for like 2 minutes. You'll see some videos, and you can leave.
Old ones.
Yeah, they're good though.
They're
good
grainy.
videos. Yeah. No. I don't
It's
think
like
anyways.
still going
I
like
have
this.
those. I have those videos from like 20 years ago.
Static.
But this is, yeah. That's where you can find me. Yeah, Rav Gav.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This is a
pleasure.
real privilege. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Welcome to
Thank you.
Houston. We're looking forward to a great job together.
Yeah.